The Everly Brothers, Phil and Don, were legendary music icons. They had a huge impact on rock and roll, inspiring many artists. But behind their success, there were struggles and secrets. The brothers faced personal battles, intense sibling rivalry, and complicated relationships. Today, we'll dive into the lives of Phil and Don Everly, exploring their career, personal struggles, and the untold truths kept for decades. Life before fame. Don Everly was born on February 1, 1937, in Brownie, Kentucky. His brother, Phil, followed 2 years later, born on January 19, 1939, in Chicago, Illinois. Their parents, Ike and Margaret Everly, were already involved in music. Ike was a coal miner who played the guitar with a unique thumb-picking style, a skill he passed on to his sons. Margaret, although not a professional musician, had a beautiful singing voice and played a significant role in their musical education. The Everly family moved frequently because of Ike's work in the mines. Despite these relocations, music was always a constant in their lives. By the early 1940s, they settled in Shenandoah, Iowa, marking a significant turning point for the family, especially for Don and Phil. In Shenandoah, Ike Everly hosted his own radio show on KMA and KFNF, providing a platform for the family to perform. This early exposure to live performance and radio was crucial for Don and Phil. They developed their musical skills and learned about stage presence and live performance dynamics. Don and Phil attended Longfellow Elementary School in Shenandoah. Even at a young age, they were active in music and extracurricular activities. Their performances on their father's radio show made them local celebrities, gaining a reputation for their harmonizing talents. By the mid-1950s, the Everly family moved to Knoxville, Tennessee, seeking better opportunities in the music industry. Don and Phil enrolled at West High School in Knoxville, continuing to refine their musical abilities and performing more independently from their parents. Knoxville was an important stop in their journey. Here, they started performing more as a duo, allowing them to experiment and find their unique sound, which would soon captivate audiences beyond their local performances. In 1955, the brothers moved to Nashville, Tennessee, the heart of the country music industry. Nashville was bustling with musical talent, and Don and Phil quickly immersed themselves in the vibrant scene. They attended local clubs and connected with prominent musicians and producers. Their initial time in Nashville was challenging. They signed their first recording contract with Columbia Records, but their early recordings did not make a significant impact. Despite these setbacks, Don and Phil remained determined, continuing to perform regularly and perfect their craft. The rise to music stardom. In 1957, the Everly Brothers recorded Bye Bye Love, a song rejected by 30 other artists. Written by Felice and Boudleaux Bryant, it became a huge hit, reaching number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 1 on the country and western chart. This marked the start of a successful collaboration with the Bryants. Following this, they released Wake Up Little Susie, another number 1 hit on the Billboard Hot 100. Despite its success, Wake Up Little Susie caused some controversy because of its lyrics, which some listeners found suggestive. These early hits were crucial in establishing the Everly Brothers as key figures in the emerging rock and roll scene. In 1958, the Everly Brothers continued their success. They released All I Have to Do Is Dream, another Bryant composition, which topped both the pop and country charts. This song further showcased their unique harmonies and solidified their place in the music industry. That same year, they released their debut album, The Everly Brothers, which featured several of their hit singles. Their ability to blend rock and roll with country influences set them apart from other artists of the time and appealed to a wide audience. The Everly Brothers maintained their momentum in 1960 with the release of Kathy's Clown, their first single with Warner Brothers Records. Kathy's Clown was a huge success, reaching number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and becoming one of their signature songs. This year also saw them embark on extensive tours across the United States and internationally. These tours helped to increase their popularity and cement their reputation as top performers. Their live performances were noted for their energy and the tight harmonies that had become their trademark. In the same year, the Everly Brothers continued to expand their career. They released their second album with Warner Brothers, A Date with the Everly Brothers, which included hits like Let It Be Me and When Will I Be Loved. Their music during this period continued to showcase their ability to blend rock and roll with country, appealing to both pop and country audiences. This dual appeal was a key factor in their sustained success and helped them to reach a broader audience. By 1961, the Everly Brothers were at the peak of their popularity. They continued to produce hit records and perform to sold-out audiences. However, this period also brought challenges. In October 1961, Don and Phil enlisted in the United States Marine Corps Reserve. This was partly to avoid being drafted into the Army during the Vietnam War era, allowing them to maintain some control over their careers. Their 6-month active duty requirement temporarily interrupted their music careers. Despite the challenges, they managed to release successful songs like Walk Right Back and Ebony Eyes, both of which charted well in 1961. The pressures of maintaining their public image, constant touring, and recording schedules began to take a toll on the brothers. They faced the stress of staying relevant in a rapidly changing music industry, while also dealing with personal and professional pressures. In 1962, the Everly Brothers showed their dedication to traditional music with 2 album releases, The Golden Hits of the Everly Brothers and Folk Songs of the Everly Brothers. The Golden Hits compiled their most successful tracks, reminding fans of the sound that made them famous. On the other hand, Folk Songs highlighted their talent in various musical genres, reflecting their deep roots in American folk music. Despite the changing music scene of the early 1960s, the brothers stayed true to their style, creating music that stuck to their artistic vision. That same year, they released That's Old-Fashioned, That's the Way Love Should Be, their last top 10 hit in the United States. This song featured their signature harmonies and innocent lyrics, connecting with their loyal audience even as musical tastes shifted. Later, they ventured into holiday music with Christmas with the Everly Brothers and the Boys Town Choir, featuring traditional Christmas songs with choral arrangements, showcasing their versatility. As the British invasion changed the music landscape, the Everly Brothers adapted by reissuing some of their earlier work. In 1963, they released 15 Everly hits, and in 1964, The Very Best of the Everly Brothers, featuring re-recordings of their earlier hits. This was a strategic move to keep their music relevant during a time of rapid change. Though their new releases struggled against the British bands dominating the charts, these compilations reminded listeners of their significant contributions to rock and roll. The single Gone, 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 released in 1964, saw moderate success, but it was clear that their commercial peak in the U.S. had passed. Despite this, they continued to tour and perform, maintaining a strong presence on the live circuit. In 1965, they released Beat and Soul and Rock and Soul, featuring a mix of covers and original songs, reflecting their effort to stay relevant while retaining their signature harmonies. The Everly Brothers remained popular in Europe, capitalizing on this with extensive tours. In 1966, they released the album In Our Image, which included the minor hit The Price of Love. Their European tours were successful, with a dedicated fan base appreciating their harmonies and musical craftsmanship. That same year, the Everly Brothers were experimenting with new sounds and adapting to the evolving music industry. They released Two Yanks in England, featuring songs written by members of the Hollies. This collaboration showcased their willingness to explore different musical directions and their adaptability in a changing musical landscape. The album's experimental nature reflected the broader cultural shifts of the 1960s and highlighted their ability to stay creatively relevant. Disbandment. In 1968, the Everly Brothers released Roots, an album that marked a return to their country music beginnings. Although it received critical acclaim, it didn't achieve commercial success. Roots blended traditional country sounds with contemporary influences, showing the brothers' talent for merging different musical styles. The album featured personal tracks that reflected their experiences and struggles. Despite its lack of commercial success, Roots was appreciated for its artistry and remains a significant part of their discography. The late 1960s were tough for the Everly Brothers. The music industry was changing fast with new rock bands and shifting tastes. The Everlys struggled to maintain their previous level of fame. They continued to release music and tour, but their popularity was fading. Personal issues also began to strain their professional relationship. Tensions between Don and Phil Everly grew, partly because of Don's battle with drug addiction. These personal struggles started to affect their performances and public appearances, leading to a noticeable decline in their success. In 1970, they released The Everly Brothers Show, an album featuring live performances from their television special of the same name. This album aimed to recapture some of their former glory by highlighting their live performance skills. The television special showcased their harmonies and stage presence, reminding fans of the talent that made them famous. However, despite their efforts, the album did not significantly boost their declining career. The changing musical landscape, dominated by new rock bands and different styles, overshadowed their traditional approach. The breaking point for the Everly Brothers came in 1973 during a performance at Knott's Berry Farm in Buena Park, California. During the show, the tension between Don and Phil reached a peak. In a dramatic and public display of their strained relationship, Phil smashed his guitar and left the stage. This incident effectively marked the end of their partnership as a duo. The next day, Don announced the band's breakup, signaling the end of an era for the Everly Brothers. This public breakup was the result of years of personal and professional struggles, highlighting the profound impact these issues had on their careers. The much-awaited comeback. In 1983, after being apart for 10 years, the Everly Brothers came back together, marking an important moment in their music career. Fans and critics were excited about their reunion. On September 23, 1983, they performed at the Royal Albert Hall in London. This concert was a huge success, attracting a large, enthusiastic crowd. Their performance was energetic and showcased their musical skills. This concert was later released as a live album called Reunion Concert, which received positive reviews and renewed interest in their music. Following the reunion, the Everly Brothers went back to the studio to create new music. In 1984, they released the album EB84, produced by Dave Edmunds. This was their first studio album in over 10 years. A standout track from EB84 was On the Wings of a Nightingale, written by Paul McCartney specifically for them. The single did well, reaching number 50 on the US Billboard Hot 100 and number 41 on the UK Singles Chart. The album was well received by both fans and critics, marking a successful return for the duo. Riding the success of EB84, the Everly Brothers released another album in 1986 titled Born Yesterday, again produced by Dave Edmunds. This album featured a mix of original songs and covers. The singles Born Yesterday and These Shoes charted on the US country charts, showing that the brothers were still relevant in the music scene. Born Yesterday was praised for blending their classic harmonies with a modern sound, further solidifying their comeback. During this time, the Everly Brothers were very active in touring, performing at various venues around the world. Their live shows were praised for their energy and the timeless quality of their harmonies. They drew large crowds, with fans eager to see them perform live. They also made several television appearances, which helped maintain their visibility and popularity. These appearances included performances on popular music shows and interviews where they talked about their reunion and future plans. In 1988, the Everly Brothers released Some Hearts, their final major studio album of the decade. The album included the single Don't Worry Baby, a cover of the Beach Boys hit. This version saw moderate success and was appreciated for its fresh take on the classic song. Some Hearts showed the brothers' ability to adapt to new musical trends while staying true to their distinctive sound. The album was well received by fans and added to their impressive discography. A major milestone in the Everly Brothers' career came in 1990 when they were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. This honor recognized their significant contributions to the music industry and their influence on many artists. The induction ceremony celebrated their legacy, with the brothers performing and reflecting on their storied career. This accolade cemented their status as pioneers of rock and roll and highlighted the lasting impact of their music. Throughout the early 1990s, the Everly Brothers continued to tour and perform, maintaining a dedicated fan base. Their live shows were highly anticipated events, and they continued to draw large audiences. Despite not achieving the same level of commercial success as in their early years, the brothers remained respected figures in the music industry. They were admired for their harmonies, musical craftsmanship, and the significant influence they had on the rock and roll genre. Final tour. In 1997, the Everly Brothers released a live album called The Everly Brothers Live in Paris 1963. This album featured one of their energetic performances from a European tour, showcasing their lasting talent and stage presence. Despite changes in the music industry over the years, their harmonies remained captivating. Fans and critics welcomed the album, proving their enduring appeal. During this period, the Everly Brothers continued to tour extensively across the United States and Europe, keeping a busy performance schedule. In the late 1990s, the Everly Brothers were recognized for their significant contributions to the music industry. They were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1986, and in 1997, they received another major honor, the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. This award highlighted their influence on popular music and their impact on numerous artists. The award ceremony was a moment of reflection and acknowledgement, celebrating their key role in shaping rock and roll. In the early 2000s, the focus shifted to reissues and compilations rather than new recordings. In 2005, two notable compilations were released: Too Good to Be True and Give Me a Future. These albums featured previously unreleased demo recordings and rare tracks from their early years, giving fans a deeper look into the creative process of Don and Phil Everly. These compilations were more than nostalgic trips. They showcased the brothers' innovative contributions to rock and roll harmonies and offered a fresh perspective on their early work. During this time, the Everly Brothers faced several personal challenges, especially related to health. Phil Everly struggled with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which greatly affected his ability to perform. Despite these difficulties, Phil's dedication to music and his fans never faltered. The brothers continued to tour and perform, showing remarkable resilience. Their performances combined nostalgia with enduring talent, and fans cherished every opportunity to see them live. The Everly Brothers' influence on music extended far beyond their own performances. Many contemporary artists covered their songs, introducing their timeless melodies and harmonies to new audiences. Their music continued to be popular on oldies radio stations, ensuring their legacy lived on. The unique blend of country, rock, and pop in their songs allowed their music to cross generations, resonating with both old and new listeners. In 2005, the Everly Brothers went on their final tour. This tour was a bittersweet event, filled with emotional performances and heartfelt goodbyes. The brothers' dedication to their craft and their fans was clear in every show. Despite physical challenges, they delivered performances that were both nostalgic and powerful, reminding everyone of their important place in music history. The brothers' final years. Phil Everly, Phil Everly stayed active in the music industry even in his final years, despite serious health problems. He stopped performing regularly in 2007 but continued working on music projects. In 1990, he recorded a duet called On Top of the World with Dutch singer René Schumann, showing his enduring love for music. Phil's health declined significantly due to chronic obstructive pulmonary disease caused by his lifelong smoking habit. This illness severely affected his health, forcing him to use oxygen tanks and take many medications daily. Despite these challenges, Phil remained connected to music until he passed away on January 3, 2014, at 74, in Burbank, California. His widow, Patty, highlighted how smoking had devastating effects on his health. Don Everly. Don Everly stayed more active in the music scene than his brother. He worked on solo projects and performed occasionally. In 2018, he performed Bye Bye Love with Paul Simon during Simon's farewell tour, which was Don's final performance. Don's influence in the music world continued into the late 1990s and 2000s, though he stopped regular performances by 2018. In his personal life, Don married Adela Garza in 1997, and they were together until his death. Don endorsed Hillary Clinton in the 2016 presidential election, the first time he publicly supported a candidate, feeling freer to express his views after Phil's death. Don continued honoring the Everly brothers' legacy by participating in tributes and events until he died on August 21, 2021, in Nashville, Tennessee, at 84. The Everly brothers' influence on music is immense. They played a crucial role in shaping the harmonizing styles of many later bands and artists. Musicians like Paul McCartney often acknowledged the significant impact the Everly brothers had on their music. Despite personal and professional challenges, their contributions to music remain celebrated and influential. The deaths of both brothers marked the end of an era, but their legacy continues to inspire new generations of musicians and fans. Their harmonies, innovative style, and the personal struggles they overcame contribute to their lasting impact on the music industry. Untold truths. Early career challenges. By 1955, the Everly brothers, still teenagers, were performing as a country duo in Knoxville, Tennessee. Don began writing songs for other artists, catching the eye of Nashville music pioneer Chet Atkins. Atkins got them a recording contract with Columbia Records in early 1956. Unfortunately, their first single, Keep A Lovin' Me, flopped, leading Columbia to drop them. Atkins, still believing in their talent, introduced them to Wesley Rose of Acuff Rose Music Publishers. Rose saw their songwriting abilities and offered them a deal. If they signed with Acuff Rose as songwriters, he would help them get a record deal. They agreed and signed with Acuff Rose in late 1956, and soon after, they signed with Cadence Records. Breakthrough with Bye Bye Love. On January 3, 1957, the Everly brothers recorded Bye Bye Love, a song written by Felice and Boudleaux Bryant. Despite being rejected by 30 other artists, including Elvis Presley, the Everly brothers saw its potential. The song's choppy guitar intro was taken from a song Don had written called Give Me a Future. Bye Bye Love spent 22 weeks on the charts and became their first million seller, peaking at number 2 behind Elvis Presley's Let Me Be Your Teddy Bear. The Bryants wrote several more hits for the Everly brothers, including Wake Up Little Susie and Poor Jenny. Friendship with Buddy Holly. In September 1957, the Everly brothers joined an 11-week rock and roll tour across the United States, performing with major acts like Chuck Berry, Paul Anka, Eddie Cochran, the Drifters, and Buddy Holly and the Crickets. They formed a close friendship with Buddy Holly, who wrote songs for them and received fashion tips from the Everlys. After Holly's death in a plane crash in 1959, Phil flew to the funeral in Lubbock, Texas, and sat with Holly's parents. Don stayed home, deeply affected by Holly's death. Dispute with manager Wesley Rose. In 1960, the Everly brothers left Cadence Records over a dispute about royalties and their manager, Wesley Rose. Rose had veto power over any future songs they recorded that were written by Acuff Rose songwriters, limiting their access to many top songwriters of the time. This led them to leave Cadence and sign a decade-long, million-dollar contract with Warner Brothers Records. Despite the challenges, the brothers continued to write and release their own music. They launched their own record label, Calliope Records, in 1961, primarily releasing their material as a duo and as solo artists. However, Calliope Records folded in 1962. Career decline after joining the Marines. In November 1961, at the height of their fame, the Everly Brothers enlisted in the United States Marine Corps to avoid being drafted into the Army. Their time in the Marines caused their music career to decline as they were unable to tour to support their music. After completing basic training, they performed on The Ed Sullivan Show while wearing their Marine uniforms, but their career had already taken a hit. Struggles with drug addiction. In 1961, Don Everly began receiving Ritalin therapy to cope with the demands of fame, which led to a severe addiction. Don's addiction spiraled out of control, leading to a suicide attempt in 1962 while touring in London. He was sent to a psychiatric ward and treated with electroshock therapy, which did not help him. The brothers split. As mentioned in the earlier parts of the video, tensions between Don and Phil reached a breaking point on July 13, 1973. Don announced to a reporter that he was tired of being an Everly brother. The following night, after a disastrous performance at Knott's Berry Farm, Phil smashed his guitar and stormed off stage, and Don finished the show alone. This incident marked the end of the Everly Brothers as a duo for a decade. Comeback and reflections. The Everly Brothers reunited briefly at their father's funeral in 1975 and considered a comeback in the early 1980s. Their producer, Dave Edmunds, reached out to Paul McCartney, who wrote On the Wings of a Nightingale for their comeback album, EB84. The album and their comeback tour were successful, and they continued to collaborate with major artists like Paul Simon. When Phil Everly died from chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, Don honored him with a heartfelt statement reflecting on their brotherly bond despite their differences.